I want you to do something for me. Picture the world map in your head.
Okay.
Not the political borders, but the history map. The one that tells you where civilization started, where the great religions were born, where the armies marched.
Got it.
You've got that image.
I do. It's pretty firmly etched in there from about third grade onwards, I think.
Okay. Now imagine I reached into your brain, took that map, and told you, buddy, you're holding it upside down.
Oh.
And not just you. Everyone has been holding it upside down for 1,300 years.
That is a vertigo-inducing thought. It implies everything I know about direction, location, and, identity is wrong.
That is exactly the cliff edge we are standing on today. We're looking at a theory that claims humanity, specifically the history of the Middle East and the Abrahamic faiths, has been in a 1,300-year slumber. And this isn't just about, moving a dot on a map a few inches to the left. We're talking about a radical tectonic shift in how we understand geography, linguistics, and theology.
A whole paradigm shift.
A total one. The claim that the entire narrative established during the Abbasid era was a fabrication, a cover-up designed to hide the true center of the world.
And we have to be clear right out of the gate, this is not standard textbook history.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
This is a deep, controversial, and frankly, incredibly dense re-examination of sources. We aren't just saying, maybe this happened. We are exploring a theory that says, what you think is the Holy Land is actually a decoy.
A decoy. I love that word for it. And our guide for this absolute earthquake of a topic is Dr. Khaled Waleid. He's the researcher behind the YouTube channel Almighty Covenant, or in Arabic, Mithaq al-Khaliq. Now, Dr. Waleid isn't just skimming the surface. He's digging into the Quran, the Torah, the Gospels, archaeology, and this is the part that really gets me, a forensic level of linguistic analysis.
That's the key. It really is. Dr. Waleid calls this mission an attempt to liberate true history from geographical captivity. He believes that by physically moving the map in our history books, the powers that be, specifically in the early Islamic empires, imprisoned the truth. If you control the geography, you control the narrative.
So our mission today is to unpack Dr. Waleid's findings. And, I'm going to be honest with you, some of this is going to sound wild.
It will.
We're going to talk about a tale of two cities, Becca and Mecca. We're going to talk about an identity swap between the Quraysh and a group he links to, the Maccabees.
Which is a connection I guarantee 99% of you listening have never, ever made before.
Oh, absolutely not. And we're going to talk about why your last name might be McDonald and what that has to do with ancient Middle Eastern tribal warfare.
I'm still waiting for that one. That's going to be interesting.
So let's unpack this. We have to start with the geography because everything Dr. Waleid argues rests on this realignment.
It's a foundation.
It really is. So we have this central conflict, Becca versus Mecca. Now, if you ask the average person or even a historian, they'll say Becca is just another name for Mecca, the city in Saudi Arabia.
It's poetic, right? That is the standard accepted narrative for centuries. Becca is often seen as a synonym for Mecca, or maybe a specific part of the valley where the Kaaba sits.
Like the inner sanctum or something.
Exactly. But Dr. Waleid stops the train right there. He separates them completely, not just as names, but as totally different locations with totally different spiritual statuses.
Okay, so if they aren't the same place, let's start with the first one. Where is Becca?
According to Dr. Waleid, Becca, which the Quran describes as the first house established for mankind, is Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
Al-Quds.
So the first house is the Temple Mount area, or what we call the Temple Mount.
Precisely. He argues that geographically, all the descriptions in the primary sources place Becca on the western side of the sea.
The sea meaning the Dead Sea.
Specifically west of the Dead Sea. He emphasizes the concept of baraka, or blessing. The Quran frequently refers to the land around the sanctuary as blessed.
The land which we have blessed. That phrase comes up a lot.
It does. And Dr. Waleid points out that historically, agriculturally, and spiritually, the land of the prophets, the 24 Arab Adamite prophets, was the Levant. It was Palestine.
Right, because when you think of the land of milk and honey or the land of olives and figs, you're thinking of the Mediterranean climate of Jerusalem, not necessarily the deep deserts of the Hijaz.
That is a major, major part of his argument. The geography has to match the description, and he uses a fascinating visual to anchor this. The Jerusalem cross.
Tell me about that. I find this compelling.
If you look at Jerusalem on a map and you zoom out, I mean really zoom out, look at the continents, it sits at the literal intersection of Asia, Europe, and Africa.
It's a land bridge.
It is a global trade intersection. It's a natural choke point for commerce, for armies, for culture. Dr. Waleid argues that this location was the true center. God places the first house for humanity in the actual center of human civilization, not in a geographical cul-de-sac.
A cul-de-sac, that's a good way to put it. The Hijaz is undeniably remote, especially back then, but Jerusalem is the highway.
Exactly. So in this new paradigm, in this new map, Becca is Jerusalem. It is the land of the Adamite prophets, the center of blessing.
Okay, so if Becca is Jerusalem, the city of light and blessing, then what is Mecca? Because Dr. Waleid doesn't say Mecca doesn't exist. He says it's not where we think it is, and it's not what we think it is.
This is where the map flips. He identifies the historical Mecca, the city of the enemy, in his narrative as Petra in Jordan.
Petra, the Rose City, Indiana Jones.
The very same, which is east of the Dead Sea. He refers to this as the overturned city, or al-Mutafika. He calls it the mother of villages for the unjust.
Mother of villages. That's a term usually associated with Mecca, but in a positive way.
He flips it. He says it was the capital city for a network of unjust towns. And this brings us to a really critical linguistic flip. We usually hear the word haram in Islamic tradition, like Masjid al-Haram, and we translate it as holy sanctuary.
Right. Haram means sacred, like forbidden to violate.
That is the modern religious interpretation. But Dr. Waleid goes back to the root. He argues that in this specific historical context, haram means prohibited or banned by God.
Wait, hold on. So he's saying it wasn't a holy sanctuary, it was a forbidden zone.
Yes. He suggests this city, Petra, was a center of idolatry, a place of a parallel religion established to rival Jerusalem. It was a place the true believers were supposed to boycott.
So not a sanctuary of peace, but a forbidden town that God had cursed.
That completely inverts the meaning. Instead of the sacred mosque, it's the forbidden mosque. It changes the entire texture of the history.
Wow.
And he backs this up with the Valley of Mecca argument, or Bat Makkah. There's a famous event called the Treaty of Hudaybiyah.
Right. The prophet and his followers were stopped from entering the city, and they negotiated a truce. They were camped just outside.
Dr. Waleid analyzes the geography of that event. He argues that the location of Hudaybiyah, based on the descriptions of the terrain, the vegetation, and the military maneuvering, implies they were deep inside enemy territory in the Levant.
So they were on the outskirts of Petra.
Correct. He argues that the traditional location in the Saudi Hijaz simply doesn't fit the strategic descriptions. If you are marching on a major stronghold, a commercial hub like Petra makes sense as the target. It was a seat of power.
A fortress city carved out of rock.
Exactly. He claims the Hijaz location was a later invention, a decoy created to mislead people into the desert.
I want to pause on that decoy idea, because that implies a massive conspiracy. I mean, a conscious effort to mislead. Why would anyone move the map?
Well, we'll get to the why in the finale, but essentially, if you move the location of the struggle, you erase the history of the struggle.
I'll explain that.
If the battle was for Jerusalem and you tell everyone for 1,000 years it was actually for a spot in the desert 800 miles away, you disconnect the people from the true prize. You make them forget what they were even fighting for.
You leave the front door open because everyone is guarding the backyard.
That is the perfect analogy, and that's his entire premise for why this was done.
Okay, so we have the stage set, geographically at least. Becca is Jerusalem, the good place. Mecca is Petra, the forbidden place. But cities are just stones without people.
Right.
This leads us to section 2 of our breakdown, the identity swap. Who are the actors on this stage? Who are the Quraysh?
This is where I think Dr. Waleid's linguistic work gets really provocative. In the standard story, the Quraysh are the powerful merchant tribe of Mecca in the Hijaz. They are desert traders. But Dr. Waleid, again, breaks down the word Kurdish.
Okay, is it related to kirsch? Like a shark? I remember hearing that somewhere, like a folk etymology.
That's a common one, the little shark that eats the big fish. Dr. Waleid rejects that completely. He traces it to the root Kiryath.
Kiryath, K-R-Th, okay.
Think of place names in the Bible. Kiryath Jearim, Kiryath Arba. It means village or town, specifically a permanent settlement.
So Quraysh means the villagers.
The people of the village. Or specifically, he links it to Kiryath Araba, which is the ancient name for Hebron, Al-Khalil.
Hebron, that's in the West Bank. That's Palestine.
Exactly. So he is arguing that the Quraysh were not nomads. They were not desert dwellers. They were the settled, civilized Adamite Arabs living in the blessed villages of Palestine.
Adamite Arabs. Can you clarify that term for us? It sounds very theological.
It is. He uses Adamite to distinguish the indigenous original inhabitants, the descendants of the earliest lines from Adam, from later migratory groups. He calls them the Amiyun.
Amiyun. Okay, that's a word I've heard translated as unlettered or illiterate in Islamic tradition, like the unlettered prophet.
Right, and he challenges that translation. He argues Amiyun implies Gentiles or the nations or the common people of that specific land. They were the locals.
So they weren't illiterate. They just weren't part of the rabbinical elite structure. They weren't the people of the book in that specific scholarly sense.
Correct. They were the custodians of the original pure Abrahamic tradition. They were the protectors of the true sanctuary, Becca, Jerusalem.
Okay, so the Quraysh are Palestinian villagers from the Hebron area.
That's the argument.
And he has a piece of physical evidence for this that I found. Well, it's hard to argue with. The grave of Hashim.
Hashim ibn Abd Manaf, the great-grandfather of the Prophet, the namesake of the Hashemite line, a huge figure.
A foundational figure. So where is he buried?
He is buried in Gaza.
Gaza, not Mecca, not Medina.
In Gaza, there's a mosque there named after him where his tomb is located. Now, the traditional story explains this away by saying, oh, he died on a business trip, he was a merchant, he was traveling, he got sick, and died in Gaza.
Which happens. People die on trips. It's plausible.
It does happen. But Dr. Waleid asks us to look at the pattern, not the exception. If the Quraysh are the villagers of Palestine, then Hashim being buried in Gaza isn't a travel accident. It's because he was home. He lived there. He died there. He was a leader of the Palestinian Arabs, not a visitor from the desert. Why would a man from a remote town in the Hijaz have his final resting place, his honored grave, so far from his supposed home?
It's a very different way to look at the map. If your grandfather's buried in Gaza and your trade routes are in the Levant, maybe you aren't from the Hijaz.
It anchors the entire lineage to that land. It's a physical marker.
Okay, so if the Quraysh are the good guys, the villagers of Hebron and Jerusalem, who were they fighting? Who are the Meccans? Because in the movies, the Meccans are these pagan warlords worshipping idols around the Kaaba.
Here is where Dr. Waleid drops the biggest bombshell of the entire theory. He claims there was an identity swap. He links the Meccans, the enemies, to the Maccabees.
Hold on. The Maccabees, as in the Jewish rebel dynasty, the Hanukkah story.
They're very same.
Okay, I'm going to need you to walk me through this slowly.
Yeah.
Because Meccan and Maccabees sound similar, sure, but that's a huge historical leap. How does he get there?
It starts with migration. You have to understand the flood of Aram, or Selah al-Harab.
The flood of Aram. This is in the Quran, right? The bursting of the dam.
Yes, and in historical records, the Marib Dam in Yemen burst. This was a massive catastrophe in the ancient world, like a biblical-level flood. It caused a huge migration of tribes from Yemen moving north.
A refugee crisis, essentially.
A massive one. Dr. Waleid argues that among these migrants were Israelite tribes, specifically tribes that had adopted or carried elements of Judaism from Yemen Himyar.
So they move north from Yemen. Where do they land?
They settle in Petra.
Okay, so now we have these Israelite-descended tribes in Petra. What's the Maccabee connection?
Dr. Waleid identifies these specific tribes as the Magog. He links the Maccabees to Magog, representing military and financial power. And he links the Hashemites. Now be careful here. He means the enemy faction that co-opted the name to the Hasmoneans.
The Hasmoneans were the ruling dynasty established by the Maccabees, the priests and kings.
Exactly. He sees them as Gog, the religious and political power. So the Gog and Magog prophecy isn't about monsters coming out of a wall in the future. He argues it was a historical political coalition. The Maccabees and Hasmoneans settled in Petra, the Forbidden City.
And what were they doing there?
They were building a rival power center. He argues they created a parallel religion. They built a Mosque of Harm, a Masjid Dirar, to rival Jerusalem. They wanted to divert the pilgrimage and the economic flow away from Jerusalem and towards Petra.
So the war wasn't pagans versus monotheists. It was rival monotheists. It was the true Abrahamic villagers of Jerusalem versus the distorted Israelite Maccabee faction of Petra.
That is the core conflict he describes. He calls the Maccabees Hasmoneans the sons of vipers, a term used in the Gospels as well, and claims they were the infiltrators. Yeah. They were the ones fighting the prophet to destroy the true Becca lineage and the true sanctuary.
This is heavy. It reframes the entire conflict. But let's look at the linguistics, because this is where it can get a little out there for some people.
It can.
Dr. Waleid loves his word origins, and he has this theory about names. I have to be the skeptic here because this one sounds like the internet conspiracy stuff. He claims there is a link between the Maccabees and modern Western names, the Mecca connection.
I knew we were getting here.
Yes. He lists names like McDonald, McCarthy, Mackenzie, Come on. Are we really saying Old MacDonald had a farm and a deep-seated connection to the Maccabees?
It sounds absurd on the face of it, but let's look at the argument he's making. He's not saying every MacDonald is in on a plot. He's talking about the diaspora.
The scattering of the tribes.
Right. After the fall of these empires, after the conflicts in the Middle East, where did these people go? They spread into Europe. They spread into North Africa. Dr. Waleid suggests that the prefix Mech, or Mac, which means son of in Gaelic traditions, is a linguistic fossil.
A fossil.
He argues it traces back to the Maccabee lineage or title. It became a marker of identity.
So Mac implies of the Maccabees.
In his view, yes. He argues that these families carried the legacy of that parallel religion or that specific tribal identity into Europe. Now, obviously, a guy named Dave McCarthy in Boston today isn't plotting to take over Petra.
Right, I would hope not.
But Dr. Waleid sees it as a marker of how far that Meccan Maccabean dispersion reached. It's about tracking the bloodline and the cultural influence through the debris of language.
It's like finding a Roman coin in a field in England. It tells you who was there, even if the empire is gone?
Precisely. It's a linguistic artifact. And he doesn't stop with Maccabi. He goes after the word Saracen.
Yes, Saracen. I know. That's what medieval Europeans called Arabs. And it wasn't a compliment. It usually meant heathen or enemy.
That's how it was used by the West. But where does the word come from? Dr. Waleid reclaims it. He argues the root isn't random. He traces it to Sarat or Isra.
Isra, as in Al-Isra wa Miraj, the night journey of the prophet.
Yes. Isra means to travel by night. Dr. Waleid argues that Saracen actually derives from Sara'iyun, or people of the Saratisra. It means the people of the night journey.
Wait, so Saracen isn't an insult. It's a title of honor.
He claims it was a noble title for the Palestinians, the true Arabs who were the custodians of the Holy Land where the night journey occurred. They were the people of the journey. The Europeans who were fighting them took the name and turned it into a slur. But the origin, according to the source, is deeply spiritual.
That flips the script. It's like finding out a slur used against you was actually your royal title all along.
And then on the flip side, he looks at the allies of the Maccabees, the assassins.
The assassins. Okay, usually we think of the Hashashin, the Nizari Ismailis in the 11th century. You know, the video game guys?
He goes back much further. He links assassins to the Sassans.
The Persian Empire.
Right, the Sassanids. He describes them not just as a neighboring empire, but as active allies of the Israelite Maccabee faction in Petra. He says the Sassanids were the muscle.
Hired guns.
They were the mercenaries and the imperial force used to fight against the true believers in Jerusalem. So you have this coalition. The Maccabees in Petra providing the brains and the money, and the Sassanids from Persia providing the sword and the army.
And the Saracens, the true believers in Jerusalem, are stuck in the middle.
That is the geopolitical map he draws for that period.
This context makes the religious rituals mentioned in the Quran sound totally different. There's that verse about the prayer of the disbelievers at the house. Their prayer was nothing but whistling and clapping. Muka'an wa tasdiya.
Yes. And usually we interpret that as, oh, the pagans were just making noise to be annoying. They were clapping to drown out the prophet's voice.
Right, like hecklers at a political rally.
Dr. Waleid says, no, this wasn't heckling. This was liturgy. This was their form of worship. He connects Muka, the whistling, to the prophet Micah.
The biblical prophet Micah.
Yes. He argues that the Israelite tribes in Petra had distorted the teachings of Micah. He suggests Muka refers to a specific type of ritualistic whistling or chanting associated with this sect. They were performing a rival ceremony at their black cube in Petra.
Wait, you mentioned a black cube in Petra.
Dr. Waleid argues that Petra had the original counter-Kaaba, a focal point for their rival religion.
So they weren't just building a rival city, they were building a rival ritual center, piece by piece.
A mirror image, but a distorted one. And the ritual of circling it, the tawaf, he connects to a very specific word used by Noah in his prayer in the Quran. Deer.
Deer. I've heard this in the verse where Noah prays, "My Lord, do not leave a single deer on earth from among the disbelievers." I always thought it meant dweller or person.
That's the standard translation, but Dr. Waleid links it to the root of circling or rotating, dawar, a circle, a roundabout.
Oh.
He interprets Darin as those who circle, specifically people who mindlessly circle a stone idol. He believes Noah was praying against a specific type of idolatrous ritual circumambulation of a false object, and he sees the rituals at Petra as the continuation of this ancient deer tradition.
That is, wow, it links the enemies of Noah to the enemies of the Prophet Muhammad. through a specific physical motion.
It creates a lineage of error, a consistent pattern of misguidance.
And speaking of lineage and authority, we have to talk about the 70 men. The Quran mentions 70 men of Moses who were seized by a tremor on the mountain.
And then Dr. Waleid asks, why 70? Is it just a random crowd? Is it just a symbolic number?
I always assumed it was a specific group, but I never knew which.
He connects this number directly to the Sanhedrin,
The Jewish High Court, the Supreme Council.
The Sanhedrin historically had 71 members, 70 elders, plus the high priest. Dr. Waleid argues that these 70 men mentioned in the Quran weren't just some guys on a mountain, they were the Sanhedrin, the elders of Zion, effectively.
So he's saying the leadership of the Meccan opposition wasn't a tribal council of Bedouins sitting in a tent. It was the Sanhedrin.
Operating out of Petra. He portrays them as a highly organized, legalistic, religious court that was systematically opposing the new revelation in Jerusalem. They weren't just random idolaters, they were the theological and legal establishment of this rival religion.
They were the Gog power structure, the religious authority fighting to maintain control.
Exactly. It changes the enemy from ignorant pagans to calculated theological rivals.
Calculated is the right word. Which brings us to how they sustained this war.
Money.
Always follow the money. This is Section 5, Economic Geography. We all know Surah Quraysh. For the accustomed security of the Quraysh, their accustomed security in the caravan of winter and summer.
It's one of the first surahs kids learn. It's short, it's poetic, and the traditional explanation is simple. The Quraysh were merchants. In the winter, it was cold in the north, so they went south to Yemen for spices. In the summer, it was hot in the south, so they went north to Syria for trade.
Simple. Logical. Makes sense on the surface.
Dr. Waleid rejects it completely. He asks a very practical question. Is endless travel through a scorching desert, risking bandits and dehydration, a blessing? Or is it a hardship?
Well, travel in the ancient world was incredibly dangerous. It was a necessity, not a luxury.
Exactly. He argues that God's blessing is usually about stability, settlement, peace, provision where you are. He reinterprets winter and summer, not as a travel itinerary, but as a description of the climate of Palestine.
The climate? How does that work?
Yes. He states that, scientifically, the land of Palestine, what he calls the land of the garden, has a unique agricultural profile. He argues it effectively has a winter, a spring, and a summer, but lacks the harsh, dying autumn of other regions.
Interesting.
He describes it as a cycle of perpetual provision. You can harvest winter crops, you can harvest summer crops, there is always food.
So winter and summer means we have food in the winter and we have food in the summer. We don't need to go anywhere.
Right, we don't need to go anywhere. God provided for them in situ. They were the villagers who stayed put in their blessed land.
But the surah mentions ilaf, the pact, the covenant. What does he say that is?
He defines the Ilaf as a coalition or a federation. The Quraysh of Hebron controlled the Jerusalem cross, that global intersection we talked about at the beginning. The Ilaf was the system of alliances that allowed them to manage the trade passing through their land. They didn't need to go to the goods came to them.
They're the gatekeepers of world trade.
They were, and the verse ends by saying God fed them from hunger and secured them from fear.
Right.
Dr. Waleid contextualizes this with the war we've been talking about. He says the hunger was real. It was created by an Israelite Petra blockade. The Meccans were trying to starve out the villagers in Jerusalem.
An economic siege.
Exactly. And the fear. That was the fear of the Sassanid and Maccabee military machine gathering on their borders. The fear of invasion.
So the surah isn't about safe business trips. It's about surviving a siege. It's about God keeping them alive when the superpowers of the world were trying to crush them.
It turns a nice poem about commerce into a declaration of divine protection during a world war. It becomes a geopolitical statement.
And that war leads us to the historical climax. The elephant.
The year of the elephant, a pivotal moment.
We know the story. Abraha, the Abyssinian ruler of Yemen, comes from the south with a massive army and at least one elephant to destroy the Kaaba in Mecca. Then birds come, they drop stones, the army is destroyed, and the Kaaba is saved.
That's the story we all know. But if you apply Dr. Waleid's map, the target changes completely. Why would a massive army with elephants, which are expensive and difficult to move, march into the empty desert of the Hijaz to destroy what was, at that time, a relatively small stone building and a remote outpost?
Strategically, it's a lot of effort for very little gain.
It makes almost no sense. Dr. Waleid argues the target was Becca, Jerusalem.
The elephant army was marching on Jerusalem.
That is the thesis. He describes it as the ultimate coalition attack. You had the Persian Sassanids, the assassins, providing the military tech, the elephants. You had the Israelites, the Maccabees, providing the political and religious motivation. They were marching to destroy the true house in Jerusalem and wipe out the Amian believers once and for all.
It's the Battle of Helm's Deep. It's the final stand for the true believers.
It is. And the defenders, the Quraysh of Jerusalem, were completely outmatched. They had no elephants. They had no empire. They just had the house and their faith.
And then the birds came.
The Ababil. Dr. Waleid views this as a direct divine intervention to save the spiritual center of the world from this Gog and Magog coalition. The destruction of the elephant army wasn't a skirmish in the sand. It was the event that preserved the true monotheism in the Holy Land and paved the way for what came next.
This narrative,
Yeah.
it's incredibly cinematic. It hangs together in a really compelling way. But it leaves me with a massive, gnawing question.
I think I know what it is.
If this is true, if Becca is Jerusalem, if the Quraysh are Palestinians, if the Great War was fought in the Levant, how on earth did we lose it? How did the map get flipped upside down?
The hijacking, the 1300-year slumber.
How does that happen? You can't just move a city in people's minds. Or can you?
Dr. Waleid argues you can, if you have enough time and enough power. He points to the Abbasid era. He argues that after the initial period of Islam, the administration, the scholarship, the state itself was infiltrated.
Infiltrated by whom?
He calls them the sons of vipers, a continuation of that Maccabean Hasmonean influence working from within the new empire.
So they couldn't beat the religion from the outside, so they co-opted it from the inside.
Exactly.
Right.
And what's the best way to neutralize the blessed land and its people? You move the focus. You rewrite the history books. You change the commentary. You tell the believers, hey, your holy land isn't here in the fertile strategic Levant. It's over there, in the desert. Go look at that stone.
You distract them. You create a decoy, the 800-mile decoy.
You create the ultimate decoy. By moving the spiritual North Star to the Hijaz, you effectively depopulate the Levant of its spiritual defenders. You make them forget why that land was important in the first place. You leave Palestine open.
Open for what?
Open for occupation. Open for the return of the Israelite influence. Dr. Waleid argues that the entire accepted geography of Islam, the map we all use, was a Zionist Abbasid fabrication engineered to confuse the Adamite Arabs. It was designed to detach them from their true heritage in Jerusalem so that the land could be taken.
That is a matrix moment. He's saying the world has been pulled over our eyes to hide the truth about our own home.
It challenges the very foundation of what millions and millions of people accept as historical fact. But he asks you to look at the evidence. Look at the architecture of Petra. He says it matches the overturned cities described in the Quran. Look at the grave of Hashim in Gaza.
The grave really sticks with me. It's a physical object. You can go touch it. It's not a theory.
It's a fact on the ground. And he asks, are you going to believe the physical evidence or the story you were told? Are you going to believe the map you have in your hand or the one that's been in your head?
It is a lot to process. My brain is definitely doing some gymnastics right now. But what is the takeaway here? Dr. Waleid isn't just giving a history lesson for the sake of it. He wants something. There's a call to action.
There is. He wants an awakening. He calls on people to wake up from this 1300-year slumber, to reject the desert narrative. He wants them to reclaim the Jerusalem identity, to understand that Becca is the sanctuary and Mecca was the enemy stronghold that has been destroyed and left as a ruin.
So for the listener who's driving to work or the person at the gym listening to this, why does this matter to them in their daily life?
It matters because maps matter. Our mental maps dictate our actions, our loyalties, our identities. If Dr. Waleid is right, it means that history is not just written by the victors, it is rewritten by the infiltrators. It means our understanding of the world, the way we see ourselves and our place in it, can be manipulated to serve geopolitical ends that last for centuries.
It makes you wonder, if we can lose the location of the Holy Land for 1,300 years, what else have we lost? What other truths are buried under a layer of accepted history?
That is the provocative thought to leave with. How much of your reality is based on evidence you've seen with your own eyes, and how much is based on a map someone else drew for you, for their own reasons?
That is a terrifying and exhilarating thought.
Yeah.
A massive thank you to Dr. Khaled Waleid for his incredible mind-bending work. If you want to see the maps, the verses, and the linguistic breakdowns yourself, you have to go check out Almighty Covenant on YouTube. It is a rabbit hole worth going down.
It is definitely worth the time to explore the primary source for yourself.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep questioning the map. We'll see you on the next deep dive.